The photo I posted of us was a lie, but it was a beautiful one. The caption, "Working through it is worth it," was the spell I was trying to cast to make it true. I'd already done the impossible. I'd forgiven my boyfriend for cheating. I just didn't know the real betrayal was yet to come. It wouldn't be with another girl. It would be with his words, as he slowly and carefully explained to me how his infidelity was, in the end, all my fault. The photo was a lie, but it was a beautiful one. In the picture, Leo's arm was draped around my shoulders, his thumb pressing into my collarbone. He was smiling, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, the one I hadn't seen in 3 weeks. Not since I'd picked up his phone while he was in the shower and seen Sasha's name pop up. Last night I hadn't even needed to read the rest. My thumb hovered over the share button. My stomach felt like it was full of wet cement. It was a Saturday afternoon, the light outside our window a flat, disappointing gray. From the other side of my bedroom, the only sound was the slick, rhythmic shh, shh, shh of Leo's thumb scrolling through his phone. He hadn't looked up in almost an hour. I'd taken the photo last week at the park. We'd bought overpriced lemonades and pretended everything was fine for 2 whole hours. I'd forced a smile so wide my cheeks ached, and when I looked at the picture later, I almost believed it. I typed the caption, my fingers stiff. "Working through it is worth it." The red heart emoji looked like a drop of blood. I hit share. It was instant. The little hearts and ones started to bubble up. "So strong, Chloe. Love this. You guys, yes." Knew you'd figure it out. Each comment felt like a tiny pinprick in my skin. They were cheering for a movie they hadn't seen, applauding a script I was writing as I went. I was performing for them, for him, for myself. I was trying to cast a spell, to post this new reality into existence. If enough people believed we were okay, maybe we would be. Leo sighed, a sharp huff of air, and double-tapped something on his screen. He was probably watching basketball highlights, or maybe he was scrolling past pictures of Sasha. My chest tightened. I locked my phone and dropped it onto my comforter, the small thump loud in the quiet room. Leo's head finally lifted. His eyes were bleary, unfocused. "What?" "Nothing." My voice was too bright. "Just posted something." He gave a vague, and went to put his phone down, but hesitated. I watched his hand. He deliberately, carefully, placed its screen down on my nightstand. Before, he used to toss it anywhere. Now his phone was a loaded weapon, and he always made sure it was pointing away from me. "Come here," he murmured, patting the bed. I slid across the covers and tucked myself against his side. He was warm, and he smelled like his deodorant, that sharp mint and cedarwood scent that I used to think was the safest smell in the world. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me in so tight my ribs creaked. "I'm never going to stop making it up to you, Chloe," he whispered into my hair. His voice was thick with that new sincerity, the one he'd been using ever since I found out. "You know that, right? I was an idiot. It was nothing." "I know," I whispered back, my face pressed into his sweatshirt. I wanted to believe him more than I wanted to breathe. This was the part I'd been waiting for. The hot part. The affection that proved I'd made the right choice by staying. Sasha's face flashed in my mind, her laughing in the cafeteria, her perfect eyeliner. It was nothing, but nothing had a name and a locker 2 doors down from mine. I must have stiffened, my shoulders going rigid without my permission. Leo sensed it instantly. He didn't pull away, but the warmth vanished. His arms became a cage. "What?" he asked, his voice flat. "Nothing. It's nothing." "It's not nothing." He unwrapped himself from me and sat up, rubbing his hand over his face. The air between us turned cold. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "That?" He gestured vaguely at me. "That thing where you go somewhere else. You're here, but you're not. We can't do this, Chloe. We can't move on if you're just going to be weird every time I touch you." My stomach dropped. Acid climbed up my throat. He sounded annoyed. He sounded like I was the one making this difficult. "I'm not," I said, my voice small. "I'm not being weird. I'm sorry. You don't have to be sorry, he said, which only made me feel worse. I'm trying really hard here, Chloe. You gotta meet me halfway. I am. The desperation in my voice disgusted me. I reached out and put my hand on his knee. I am trying. I promise. I want things to be normal again. He looked at my hand, then up at my face. His expression softened, but it wasn't the old easy smile. It was something new, something measured. He looked at me like he was deciding whether or not to forgive me. I know, he said, his voice gentle again. He leaned in and kissed my forehead, a dry, brotherly press of lips. It will be, I promise. He gave my knee a final pat, then turned and picked his phone back up. The screen lit up, painting his face in a cool blue light. His thumb resumed its steady shh rhythm. I sat next to him, hollowed out, the distance between us suddenly wider than the entire city. I'd posted my lie and he'd given me his. We were working through it. I looked down at my own phone. It was buzzing silently on the comforter, the screen dark. I already knew who it was. I picked it up. One new text message. From Maya. That post is a choice. You free to talk? My phone was still buzzing on my nightstand when Leo finally got up to leave. I hadn't answered Maya. I didn't know what to say. You coming to Ben's tonight? He asked, pulling his keys from his pocket. The jingle-jangle sound was sharp. I don't know, I said, my voice flat. I have a lot of homework. He walked over to me, tilting my chin up with his fingers. His eyes were serious. We have to, Chloe. If we hide, it makes it a bigger deal. We just have to be normal. For one night, please. He kept saying we, as if we had been caught, as if we were both in trouble. Okay, I whispered. Normal. That's my girl. He kissed me, quick and hard, and was gone. Ben's house always smelled like stale popcorn and dryer sheets. It was his parents' basement, a sea of beige carpet and oversized sinking couches. A small TV in the corner played a basketball game on mute, casting flickering blue light over the five of us. It was just me, Leo, Ben, his girlfriend Anna, and our friend, Sam. Intimate. No escape. I was curled in the corner of one couch, nursing a lukewarm can of soda, trying to look absorbed in a bowl of pretzels. Leo was on the other side of the room, deep in a loud, laughing conversation with Ben about the game. He looked so easy, so normal. He'd barely looked at me since we arrived. I just think it's insane, Anna was saying, pulling her knees to her chest. She was talking about some celebrity couple who'd broken up. He's the one who messed up, and now she's the one posting apology statements. It's PR, man, Sam said, tossing a kernel of popcorn into his mouth. It's all damage control. Maybe, Anna mused, but still, a relationship is a two-way street, right? You never really know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe she wasn't all innocent. My pretzel turned to paste in my mouth. I felt more than saw Leo go still. His laughter cut off mid-sound. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him turn his head, just slightly. His eyes were fixed on Anna, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He wasn't part of the conversation, but he was listening. He was listening so hard the air around him felt thin. I took a shaky sip of my soda. The bubbles burned my throat. He held that stillness for a long, heavy second. Then, just as quickly, he laughed at something Ben said, slapped his knee, and turned back to the game. The conversation moved on. They started talking about school, about the upcoming end-of-year exams, about anything else. But I couldn't unhear it. A two-way street. I felt Leo's awareness of me from across the room. It was like a physical weight, a string pulling taut between us. He knew I'd heard it. I knew he'd heard it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Maya. You okay? You're not answering. I ignored it and stood up too quickly, my head swimming. I'm just going to get some air. No one noticed except Leo. His eyes tracked me as I walked past him, up the carpeted stairs and out the sliding glass door to the backyard. The night air was cold. It smelled like damp grass and chlorine from the neighbor's pool. I wrapped my arms around myself, my thin t-shirt useless against the chill. The hum of the party felt worlds away. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to go back 3 weeks, to the person who didn't check her boyfriend's phone. The door slid open behind me. I didn't have to turn. I knew the sound of his footsteps on the concrete patio. "Hey," he said, his voice soft. He didn't come too close. "Hey." We stood in silence for a minute. The only sound was a distant siren. "You know," he said, his voice casual, "what Anna said tonight. About relationships being a two-way street. She's not wrong." I turned to look at him. His face was in shadow, but I could see the hard line of his jaw. "What does that mean, Leo?" He sighed, a long, mournful sound, and ran a hand through his hair. He looked like the victim. He looked tragic. It got me thinking about, about Sasha. I said her name. It felt like swallowing glass. "No," he said quickly. "Well, yeah, but about before that. About us." He finally looked at me, his eyes full of a strange, deep sadness I'd never seen before. "I was really lonely back then, Chloe." My breath caught. "What?" "Around midterms," he said, his voice gaining a bit of strength. "You were so focused on your exams. It was just all you talked about. It felt like you weren't there for me, like I didn't exist." I stared at him. I had been focused. I'd been stressed. I was trying to get my history grade up. I'd been at the library. I remembered him texting, "You still studying?" And me replying, "Can't talk in the zone." I'd thought he understood. I was studying, Leo. That's it. I know. "I know you were," he said. And he sounded so reasonable, so understanding, that my own defense felt childish. "I'm not blaming you. I'm just being honest so we can fix this. So it doesn't happen again. I felt pushed away. And I don't know, weak." He framed it as a confession. A moment of weakness caused by a moment of loneliness. My mind was spinning, trying to connect the dots. He had cheated. That was a fact. But he was drawing a new map. A map that showed a path leading from me to his mistake. He had cheated because I studied. I could barely get the words out. "Are you saying this is my fault?" "No." He stepped forward, grabbing my hands. His were freezing. "No, Chloe, God, no. It's my fault. I'm the one who messed up. 100%. I don't know. I guess I just wish you'd seen how lonely I was." He was looking at me with such raw, pleading vulnerability. He was the one who had cheated, but suddenly I felt a sharp, stabbing pang of guilt. I had been busy. I had told him I couldn't talk. Had I pushed him away? Had I left him alone when he needed me? He was giving me a reason that wasn't "Sasha is hot" or "I don't care about you." He was giving me a reason that, in a sick, twisted way, put me back in the center of his world. He'd cheated because he loved me so much, and I wasn't there. "Leo, I didn't know what to say." "It's okay," he whispered. He pulled me into a hug, burying his face in my neck. His arms locked around me. "We're okay. We just have to be honest. Both of us." I stood there, rigid in his embrace, the cold air on my back. He was right. It was his fault. He'd said so. But my stomach was churning with a new, unfamiliar poison. I had an exam. He had an affair. And as I stood there in the dark, my mind frantically replaying every night I'd spent at the library, I couldn't shake the horrifying thought. Maybe it was a two-way street. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in rewriting history. Leo's gaslighting wasn't a flood. It was a drip, a slow, steady poison that I willingly drank. It happened in tiny moments. We were in my bedroom, supposedly studying for finals. I was trying to memorize formulas, but my brain felt like static. Leo was scrolling through his phone's camera roll, his thumb flicking past old photos. "Hey, remember this?" He turned the screen toward me. It was a picture from a party at Jenna's house 2 months ago, before everything. I was in the corner of the frame, laughing with Maya. Leo was in the background, holding a red cup, looking at his phone. "Yeah," I said. a small, genuine smile touching my lips. That was a fun night. Leo's face clouded over. He turned the phone back to himself, his thumb hovering over the delete button. Was it? I remember it differently. The cement was back in my stomach. What do you mean? I don't know. He let out a small, bitter laugh. You were miserable, Chloe. You complained about the music, and then you just vanished. You left me alone for hours to go talk to Maya and Anna. My brow furrowed. I did complain about the music. It was all bass and no melody. But I didn't vanish. I'd been circulating, talking to people. I'd been with him most of the night. Hadn't I? I didn't leave you alone, Leo, I said, but my voice wavered. The memory was suddenly blurry, overwritten by his conviction. You did, he said, not unkindly. He sounded resigned, like he was just stating a sad, unavoidable fact. It's fine. It's just, I was in a really weird headspace. I felt like a total loser, just standing there by myself while my girlfriend was off with her friends. He paused, his gaze dropping to the phone. He didn't have to say the next part. I said it for him. That's the night I really talked to Sasha, he finished, his voice quiet. Yeah, she came up to me because I looked so out of it. He didn't say, you did this. He didn't have to. He had laid the breadcrumbs, and I followed them. My complaint about the music, my conversation with Maya, my abandonment. It all led in a straight, logical line to Sasha. His infidelity was no longer an act of betrayal. It was an act of comfort. My fault. I didn't argue. I just stared at the page of my textbook, the formulas blurring into meaningless squiggles. I didn't realize, I murmured. It's okay, he said, rubbing my back. We're past it. We're better. The poison dripped. A few days later, we were on his couch, watching a movie. My head was on his chest. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. I should have felt safe. I felt like I was holding my breath. His phone vibrated on the coffee table. I felt his chest muscle tense just for a fraction of a second. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on the movie, on the sound of his breathing. But my own heart was hammering. My eyes kept flicking to the dark screen. Who was it? Was it her? He noticed. He always noticed. He sighed, a heavy, theatrical sound of disappointment, and picked up the phone. It's just my mom, he said, his voice flat. He angled the screen so I could see the text. Dinner at 7? Don't be late. Okay, I said, trying to sound casual. He tossed the phone back on the table and sat up, dislodging me. You've always been like this, Chloe. Like what? I asked, my voice small, so worried, so untrusting. Even before any of this, he jested vaguely. Remember when I went to that soccer camp? You texted me every 5 minutes. You were always so worried about me talking to other girls. That lack of trust? It's hard, you know? It really pushes a guy away. I stared at him. He had gone to a soccer camp. I had texted him. But I missed him. I thought it was cute. He'd sent me heart emojis back. But now, in this new, poisoned light, my affection was reframed as possession. My loneliness was anxiety. My normal, teenage insecurity was a suffocating lack of trust that had apparently been slowly choking him for years. I just missed you, I whispered, the defense sounding weak even to my own ears. I know, he said, and he stroked my hair. He was so gentle, so understanding of my fatal flaws. I know, but it's a lot sometimes. His words hit their mark. I was the problem. My anxiety was the problem. My lack of trust was the problem. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had escaped me. And now, my lingering, perfectly justified suspicion was just more proof that I was the one who was broken. The public part started on a Tuesday. I was scrolling through Instagram stories, half watching blurry videos from a party I hadn't gone to. Then Leo's icon popped up, a black screen, one line of white text, a lyric from some obscure sad artist he loved. Maybe I'm the one who's hard to love. My blood ran cold. I tapped again. Another black screen. Just want space to breathe. I watched them loop. I clicked on the Viewed By icon at the bottom. The list was a roll call of our lives. Ben, Anna, Sam, dozens of people from our school. They were seeing it. They were all seeing his side. He wasn't the cheater. He was the misunderstood one, the one who was hard to love, the one who needed space. From me. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Maya. I let it go to voicemail. I just couldn't. She found me the next day by my locker, right after history. Her eyes were sharp, her mouth set in a hard line. He's making you think this is your fault. Chloe, it wasn't a question. I don't know what you're talking about, I mumbled, fumbling with my combination lock. The hell you don't. She lowered her voice, but it was full of steel. His Instagram story? Space to breathe? Are you kidding me? He's painting you as some crazy possessive girlfriend, so he doesn't look like the bad guy. It's not like that, I snapped, yanking my locker open. It's complicated. We're complicated. You don't know everything. It's not complicated, she hissed, stepping closer. He cheated on you, period, full stop. Now he's making you feel bad about it, and you're letting him. Can't you see it? Her words were an attack. They were an attack on him, on me, on the fragile, broken thing I was trying so desperately to rebuild. She was calling me stupid. She was saying I was weak. Why can't you just be supportive? The words burst out of me, hot and venomous. You're supposed to be my best friend, Maya, but you just want me to be miserable. You want us to break up. The hurt that flashed across her face was so deep, so real, that I almost flinched. She stared at me for a long second, her eyes wide. Then she just deflated. The fight went out of her. Fine, she said, her voice flat and cold. I'm not supportive. Got it. She took a step back, pulling her bag higher on her shoulder. Maya, wait! I started, but the words died in my throat. No, it's fine. She wouldn't look at me. But when he's done with you, when he's finally convinced you that you deserve all this, don't say I didn't warn you. She turned and walked away. I stood there by my open locker, the smell of old books and stale air filling my lungs. The hallway was crowded, but I had never felt so completely alone. I had pushed away the one person who saw the truth. I was all in. It was just me and Leo now. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from him, thinking about you. I closed my eyes, leaned my forehead against the cold metal of my locker, and let the poison settle. I was in my room in the dark when my phone, silent on my nightstand, lit up. Then it lit up again. And again. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It wasn't one text. It was a chain reaction, a group chat. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't been in a real group chat in weeks, not since I'd muted the one with Maya. I fumbled for the phone, my thumb slipping on the screen. It was our old friend group chat. The crew, someone, Anna, had resurrected it. My eyes scanned the last few messages. Anna. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Leo, what is going on with your Insta stories? Ben, dude, not cool. Sam, seriously, what's up? My breath hitched. I scrolled up. They'd been talking for 5 minutes, a rapid-fire exchange I'd missed. Anna, it's not fair to Chloe. Ben, just talk to us, man. And then the 3 little dots, the ones that make your stomach turn inside out. Leo is typing. The dots appeared, vanished, and reappeared. He was writing a lot. He was crafting. I sat up, pulling my knees to my chest, the phone's blue light the only thing in the room. I was watching my own execution, and I couldn't look away. The message loaded. It was a solid wall of text. Leo, look, guys. I know what you're thinking. And I've told Chloe this. I'm not running from it. I messed up. I made a huge mistake. And I'm trying to own that. I really am. My hands were shaking. I could already feel the but, Leo. But. It's not that simple. Nothing ever is. You guys only see one side. You see what I did, but you don't see the why. You don't see what the last 6 months were like. I'm not trying to make excuses, but a relationship is 2 people. And I was drowning, my throat closed. Drowning. Leo. I was so lonely. Chloe, she's amazing. You know I love her. But she has this anxiety, this pressure. It's like I couldn't do anything right. I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't go anywhere without her thinking I was doing something wrong. That soccer camp thing she was obsessed with? I was just trying to breathe. It was suffocating. I felt like I was suffocating. He was using the exact words he'd used on me. He was taking our private poisoned conversations and making them public. Leo. It was constant. The possessiveness, the lack of trust. It wears you down. I kept trying to tell her, but it was like talking to a wall. Our relationship was already falling apart. It was broken long before Sasha, and yeah, I messed up. I shouldn't have done it. But Sasha was just an escape. She was someone I could talk to who wasn't accusing me of something, Leo. I'm not saying that to hurt her. I love her, but I'm not the only one who broke this. I'm flawed. I'm a mess. I know that. But it wasn't just me. I'm just tired of being the only bad guy. The chat was silent for a full agonizing 10 seconds. My phone felt like it weighed 100 pounds. It was hot, searing into my palm. I couldn't breathe. He'd done it. He'd taken my love, my worry, my insecurity, all the things that were part of me, and twisted them into a weapon. He'd just told everyone she deserved it. Then the replies came. Sam, damn, Leo, that's heavy. Ben, man, I didn't know. I'm sorry. Then the one that broke me, Anna. Wow, Leo, I had no idea. Chloe, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was like that. Her sympathy. It was for him. The emotional abandonment was complete. It wasn't just him. It was everyone. He hadn't just betrayed me with Sasha. He was doing it all over again right now, sacrificing my reputation to a dozen people just to salvage his own. My vision tunneled. The screen glowed. The room was black. The only sound was the roar of blood in my ears. I wasn't trembling with sadness. I was trembling with a rage so pure and hot it burned the tears from my eyes. My thumb moved, leaving the chat. I went to my contacts. My finger hovered over his name, Leo. The red heart felt like a sick joke. I pressed call. It rang once, twice. He picked up. Hey, he said. His voice was normal, a little tired, like he'd just finished a big exam. How could you? My voice was a low, shaking thing I didn't recognize. A pause. How could I what? He asked, his voice instantly cold, defensive. That? The group chat. My throat was raw. You told them. You blamed me. Chloe, I didn't, he said, and the gaslighting was so immediate, so reflexive, it made me dizzy. I was just being honest. I was just telling the truth. The truth? I was standing up now, pacing the tiny square of my room in the dark. You told them I was possessive. You told them I suffocated you. You made it sound like I made you do it. I was suffocating, he shot back, his voice rising. I did feel that way. You need to accept your part in this, Chloe. We've talked about this. My part? My part? I was almost screaming. My part was that I was stressed about an exam? My part was that I trusted you? That's my part? No, he said, his voice dropping to a flat, chilling calm. Your part is that you're refusing to see it. It was a two-way street, Chloe. I've been trying to tell you that. I'm not the bad guy, not the only one. I stopped pacing. I stood in the middle of my room, staring at the dark window. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't ashamed. He believed it. He had rewritten our history so completely that he was now the victim. He had cheated, and in his story, I was the one who owed him an apology. I was just telling the truth, he said again, his voice firm. We can't fix this if you're still in denial. I opened my mouth. No sound came out. I had given him my forgiveness. I had defended him to my best friend. I had let him poison my own memories, my own reality. And for what? So he could turn around and hand me the knife, telling me I'd stabbed myself? There was nothing left to say. He had already said it all. To everyone. The silence on the line stretched, thick and heavy. He didn't fill it. He was waiting for me to break, waiting for me to say, "You're right. I'm sorry." I pressed the red end call button. The connection died. The silence in my room was absolute. My phone screen lit up again. A new message. From Anna Chloe, are you okay? We should talk. I feel like I only ever heard your side. Anna's text glowed on my screen. I feel like I only ever heard your side. She meant his side. A typo. But it was the cruelest typo I'd ever read. It was the final verdict. He had won. He had fed them his story, and they were so full. My thumb, shaking with a cold, electric rage, moved away from our chat. It moved to the settings icon. My profile picture looked back at me, a smiling ghost. Me and Leo at the park. The lie I'd told, the one that had consumed me. I navigated through the menus, my fingers moving with a grim, robotic purpose. Account, settings, deactivate account. The app tried to stop me. A friendly blue-texted question. Why are you leaving? I didn't give it an answer. I typed in my password. My fingers were stiff, but they found the keys. Are you sure you want to do this? I pressed the final red button. The screen flickered. The feed vanished. My profile, my carefully curated photos, my comments, his comments, the entire digital record of my relationship, all of it dissolved into a simple, blank login page. The buzzing stopped. I let the phone slip from my hand. It hit the comforter with a soft thud. The silence in my room was absolute. It was vast and empty, like a house that had been cleared out. It was deafening. And then, for a single sharp second, it was a relief. I had pulled the plug. I had cut the cord. I sank back into my pillows, my body feeling heavy and useless. I felt hollowed out. Now, in the total, suffocating quiet, his words came back, not as whispers, but as accusations, as facts. You left me alone at that party. I saw myself laughing with Maya. Had he been standing in the corner, watching me, his heart breaking? Had I done that? You were so focused on your exams. I saw myself in the library, my textbook open, ignoring his text. Had he been at home, lonely, needing me? You were always so worried. That lack of trust. I saw my own hand, reaching for his phone, my stomach churning with a suspicion I'd called love. The poison was deep. It was in my bloodstream. I couldn't tell which memories were mine and which ones he had planted. I had no narrative. He had stolen it, and I had helped him. I had handed him the keys. I don't know how long I stayed in that room. The light at my window turned from gray to orange to a deep, bruised purple, and back to gray again. My mom left for work, her voice a muffled, worried sound through the door. Chloe, honey, you have to eat something. I didn't answer. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It wasn't the frantic buzz of a group chat. It was a single, heavy vibration. A text message. I ignored it. It buzzed again. I finally rolled over, the sheet tangled around my legs. The room smelled stale, like slept-in clothes in my own breath. 2 texts. From Maya, I'm on your porch. I have pizza. Please let me in. My chest seized. Maya. The last time I'd seen her, I'd spat poison at her. You're not supportive. She had been right. She had been right about everything. And that was exactly why I couldn't face her. The shame was a physical weight, pressing me into the mattress. The phone buzzed again. I'm not leaving until you open the door. It's getting cold and this box is burning my legs. A hysterical, tiny laugh bubbled in my chest and died. It hurt. I untangled myself. My muscles ached. I pulled on the same hoodie I'd been wearing for 2 days and padded barefoot out of my room. The house was cold and quiet. I walked down the stairs, each step an effort, and pulled open the front door. She was standing there, just as she'd said. The October air was crisp and it made her nose red. She was holding a large, greasy pizza box. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't angry. She just looked at me. She took in my tangled hair, my red-rimmed eyes, the gray pallor of my skin. She didn't say, I told you so. She didn't say, you look terrible. She just held up the box. Pepperoni, she said, her voice rough. Extra cheese. That was what broke me. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. The pizza. A sob tore its way out of my chest. A raw, ugly sound. I crumpled, folding in on myself right there in the doorway, and for the first time they were tears of grief, not rage. "Hey," Maya said, her voice suddenly soft. She dropped the box on the entryway table and grabbed me. She pulled me into a hug, her arms strong, and just held on. I buried my face in her shoulder, and she just stood there in the cold doorway, holding me up. I tried to say. "Shh," she said. "It's okay. Let's go inside. You need to eat." She steered me to the living room, to the big sinking couch, and sat me down. She came back with the pizza and 2 cans of soda. She opened the box. The smell of hot, melted cheese and tomato sauce filled the air. It was the first real thing I'd smelled in days. We sat in silence and ate. She ate a full slice. I just picked the pepperoni off mine. Finally, my voice a hoarse whisper, I said it. "He told everyone. He said it was my fault. And Maya, they believed him." She finished her bite, wiping her hand on a napkin. She looked at me, her eyes clear and sharp, the way they'd been in the hallway. But this time, there was no anger, only a deep, steady calm. "Yeah, I saw," she said simply. "He's weak, Chloe." I stared at her. "That's it," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "That's all this is. He's a coward and he's weak. He's not strong enough to just be the bad guy, so he has to make you one, too." She picked up her soda. "His weakness is not your fault," the words landed. They didn't fix me. They didn't stop the aching in my chest. But they were solid. They were a floor. His weakness is not your fault. It wasn't about my anxiety. It wasn't about my midterms. It was about him. It was the first thought that felt true. It was an anchor in the storm. A few days later, I was back in my room. It was clean. I had showered. The sun was streaming through the window, making dust motes dance in the light. I found it at the bottom of my desk drawer, a blank, leather-bound journal my aunt had given me for my birthday. I'd never known what to write in it. I opened it to the first page. I took a pen. I wasn't writing a Dear Diary entry. I was taking my memories back. I was performing an exorcism. I wrote, "Jenna's party." Under it, I made 2 columns. His version. I left him alone for hours. He was miserable. I vanished. My version. Talked to Maya for 20 minutes. Got him a soda. We danced to that one song. He kept checking his phone. I wrote midterms. His version. I was too focused. I pushed him away. He was lonely. My version. I studied for 3 days. I asked him if it was okay. He said, "It's fine, go for it. I'll just be at Ben's." He seemed relieved. I kept going. I filled page after page, recataloguing every memory he had tainted. The soccer camp, the texts, the lack of trust. As I wrote, the fog cleared. I saw the truth, stark and ugly. My forgiveness hadn't been a step in our healing. It had been a gift. A precious, fragile thing I had given to him, and he hadn't just dropped it. He had taken it, melted it down, and forged it into a weapon to use against me. His blame wasn't his perspective. It was a shield. It was a heavy, ugly shield he used to hide his own shame. I wrote until my hand cramped. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't happy. But I wasn't hollow. I felt cold, but I felt clear. I closed the journal. I had my story back, the real one. I felt a sense of finality, like a door had closed, and then my phone, which had been silent for days, buzzed on the desk. A normal text message. I looked down. It was a number I didn't recognize. My blood turned to ice. "Is this Chloe?" "This is Sasha. I think you need to see what he's been sending me." My phone felt like a small, hot brick in my hand. "Is this Chloe? This is Sasha. I think you need to see what he's been sending me." I read the words 10 times. Sasha. Her name on my screen was a violation. This had to be a trick, a new collaborative way to torture me, orchestrated by Leo. A final twist of the knife. My first instinct was to throw the phone, to smash it, to delete the message and pretend it never happened. But I had spent 3 days rebuilding my own mind, brick by painstaking brick. I had my journal. I had my truth. And this message, whether it was a trap or not, was a piece of the story I didn't have. My thumbs were numb, moving with a cold, detached curiosity. Where? I didn't ask what or why, just where. Her reply was almost instant. The public library. The reading room upstairs. In an hour? The library. The place I'd supposedly pushed him away. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. It was perfect. It was quiet. It was neutral. It was a place where no one would scream. Okay. I put on my shoes, my hands moving with the same robotic calm. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sadness. I felt empty. I felt like a detective on her own case, going to meet a witness I knew was lying, but I had to hear the testimony anyway. The library smelled like dust, old paper, and floor wax. It was the same smell that had clung to my clothes for all those weeks during midterms. I walked past the checkout desk, past the buzzing fluorescent lights of the computer bay, and up the wide, carpeted stairs. The reading room was a high-ceilinged cavern of silence. Sunlight slanted through tall, arched windows, illuminating floating dust. There were a few college students hunched over laptops, but the room was mostly empty. She was sitting at a long oak table in the far corner, facing the door. My first thought was, she's normal. She wasn't the monster I'd built in my head. She wasn't a seductive villain. She was just a girl in a gray hoodie, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was biting her nails, her eyes flicking nervously toward the door. She looked, I realized with a jolt, just as scared as I was. She saw me. Her hand dropped from her mouth. I walked toward her, my footsteps silent on the thick carpet. I sat down on the opposite side of the table. The wood between us felt like a mile of cold, dead land. We stared at each other. I saw her up close. Her eyeliner wasn't perfect. Her skin was broken out at her chin. She looked tired. "Hi," she whispered. Her voice was thin. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. "He's..." She started, then stopped. She took a deep breath and pulled her phone from her hoodie pocket, placing it on the table between us. She didn't unlock it. "He's telling everyone that I chased him, that I was the one, and my friends. They're all seeing that stupid group chat and..." She pressed her lips together. I'm not that person. She was here for the same reason I was. She was here to save her own narrative. "He told me you guys were basically over," she said, her words rushing out in a low, fast whisper. "He said you were. So controlling, that you were always fighting. He said you were breaking up, but you were just really fragile, and he didn't want to hurt you." My stomach twisted. That was the story he'd sold her. He'd painted me as a charity case, a broken bird he was burdened with. "He lied," I said. My voice was rusty. "I know," she said. "I see that now. But you need to see this." She finally unlocked her phone. She opened her messages. His name was at the top. Just Leo. No heart. She slid the phone across the table. "This," she said, "is from 3 weeks ago, the night after you found out. The night he was supposedly making it up to you." My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I started to read. It wasn't just last night it was a whole secret life. "Leo, she's a mess, crying all day. I can't. Leo, I feel so trapped. Sasha, you told her it was over? Leo, I'm trying. God, Sasha, I'm trying. She won't let me go. She's threatening to do something stupid." I stopped breathing. He'd used my tears, my very real, agonizing pain, as a new manipulation. He'd told her I was manipulative, suicidal. He'd painted me as a trap. Leo, I just need time. Just let me handle her. It's you. It's always been you. I scrolled and scrolled. It wasn't just one night. It was every day. Every day he'd been kissing my forehead, telling me I had to trust him, telling me I was the problem. He'd been texting her. He had been gaslighting us both. He'd built two separate, elaborate, poison-filled worlds. In my world, I was the possessive, untrusting girlfriend who had pushed him into a single, meaningless mistake. In her world, I was the unstable, emotionally manipulative ex he couldn't escape, and she was the one he truly loved. The slow, seeping dread I'd been living with for weeks hardened in an instant into a cold, diamond-hard certainty. He wasn't weak. He wasn't a coward. He was a void. There was nothing inside of him, just a desperate, gaping need to be the good guy, to be the victim, to be loved, no matter who he had to destroy to get it. My part in this wasn't that I studied for midterms. My part was that I existed. I slid the phone back across the table. My hands were perfectly steady. Sasha was watching me, her eyes wide with a mixture of guilt and, I realized, fear. She was afraid of me. Afraid I would scream or cry or throw the phone. I just looked at her. He wasn't escaping me, I said, my voice quiet, but it filled the space between us. And he wasn't running to you. He was just running. She nodded, her chin trembling. I know. I'm sorry, Chloe, for my part. I shouldn't have believed him. He's good at it, I said. The admission left a metallic taste in my mouth. Yeah, she said, looking down. He is. I stood up. The chair scraped quietly on the floor. I felt light. The poison was gone, purged by a truth so toxic it had burned everything else away. There was nothing left to doubt. There was no two-way street. There was only his path of destruction. Thank you, I said, for showing me. Chloe, wait, she said, grabbing her phone. She looked sick. There's one more thing. It's why I texted you today. I waited. She turned her phone around. A new message. At the top of the thread. Leo. Hey, you up? It was from last night. 2 days after the group chat. 1 day after I had deactivated my life. He's still trying, Sasha whispered, her eyes filled with a new kind of horror. I've been ignoring him, but he won't stop. He doesn't think any of this is real. He thinks it's all just a game he lost. I looked at the message. Hey, you up? After all that, after the fire, after the wreckage, after destroying 2 people, he was walking back to the ashes, looking for a spark. I realized with a chilling final clarity that this wasn't the end. Not for him. He was still playing, and he was waiting for one of us to make the next move. I walked out of the library, and the world was too loud. The shush of the automatic doors closing behind me was a final, soft click. Then, the rumble of a bus pulling away from the curb, a car horn, the distant chatter of people on the sidewalk. My ears felt raw, like I'd been underwater for a month and had just resurfaced. The air smelled like damp pavement and car exhaust, a sharp change from the dry, sweet smell of old paper and dust. I pulled my hoodie tighter. I felt transparent. I felt like everyone on the street could see the screenshots from Sasha's phone, like the words, "It's you." It's always been you were tattooed on my forehead. He'd lied to her. He'd lied to me. He'd built 2 separate prisons and convinced each of us that we were his only visitor. My feet moved on the concrete, taking me home. I didn't feel rage. That had burned out in the group chat. I didn't feel heartbroken. That had been purged in the library. I felt hollow, but not in the bad way. Not like the empty, aching void he'd left behind. This was a new hollowness. It was a clean, quiet, empty room, waiting for new furniture. When I got home, The house was silent. My mom was still at work. I walked into the kitchen and saw my phone on the counter where I'd left it. A black silent rectangle. It was an artifact from another life. A weapon with no more bullets. I had no messages. No notifications. The world I had discovered spins on just fine without you. I walked to my room. My journal was on my desk. I picked it up, the leather cool in my hand. I read the last entry I'd made. My version. It was all true. It was my anchor, but it was also an autopsy. It was a detailed report on something that was already dead. Sasha's face flashed in my mind. Her nervous, tired eyes. I shouldn't have believed him. She was his victim, too. Just another piece of collateral damage in his war against himself. I was free of him. I knew the truth. But the truth didn't set you free. Not really. It just showed you the bars. I was still a prisoner. I was a ghost. I had vanished from my own life, and he was still out there. Walking the halls of our school, his story, his lies, filling the space I had left behind. The silence. The digital quiet I had craved now felt less like a sanctuary and more like a different kind of trap. I was hiding. I had to go outside. My stomach rumbled. I hadn't eaten since the pizza with Maya. I grabbed a $5 bill from my desk, put on my sneakers, and walked to the corner store. It was just a block away. A small market with a flickering open sign and a bell that jingled when you walked in. Leo and I used to come here for sodas, for bags of chips that we'd eat on the walk home. My hand was on the cold metal door handle when I froze. I saw her through the glass. A girl from my math class, just someone. She was standing at the counter, paying for a sports drink. I could just wait. I could let her leave, then go in. No, I was thirsty. I was tired of waiting. I was tired of hiding. I pulled the door. The bell jingled. The girl looked up. Our eyes met. Her face did 3 things all in 1 second. First, recognition. Chloe. Second, a flash of something soft and uncomfortable. Pity. Third, and worst of all, a sudden sharp panic. Awkwardness. Her eyes darted away. She became intensely fascinated by the gum display. She grabbed her change from the counter, mumbled thanks to the cashier, and practically ran out the door, her shoulder brushing mine, her eyes fixed on the pavement. She didn't say hi. I stood there, my hand still on the door, the cold air rushing in. It was done. The verdict was in. He had poisoned the well. I wasn't just Chloe anymore. I was suffocating Chloe. I was fragile Chloe. I was the girl who had a breakdown and deactivated her Instagram. I was the problem he had heroically, tragically escaped. I bought a bottle of water, my hands shaking again. But this wasn't the hot tremor of rage. This was the cold, prickling chill of humiliation. He hadn't just taken my past. He was stealing my present. I walked back to my room. The sun was setting, filling the room with a cold orange light. The quiet aftermath. I sat on my bed, the unopened water bottle in my lap. This was the rest of my life. This was the new narrative. I could stay in my room. I could be the ghost. I could let his story be the only one ever told. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. The sound was so sudden, so violent in the quiet, that I flinched. It wasn't a call. It wasn't a group chat. It was a single, simple text. My blood turned to ice. I knew. Even before I looked. I picked it up. The name on the screen was the one I'd put there myself, a lifetime ago. Leo. The red heart was a mocking, cynical smear of color. One new message. Hey, you up? My heart didn't break. It didn't even hammer. It just stopped. It was the exact same text. The same casual late-night line he'd sent Sasha. He's still trying. He thinks it's all just a game. He had run his poison through me. He had run it through her. He had blown up our entire world. And now, after 2 days of silence, he was back, tapping on the glass. Hey, you up? I saw it all. The path he was on. He was trying me, and if I didn't answer, he would try Sasha again. And if she didn't answer, he would find someone new. A new blank page to write his story on, to cast as his savior, and then eventually as his villain. The old me, the girl from a week ago, would have screamed. She would have replied with a wall of text. She would have sent the screenshots from Sasha's phone. I know what you did. She would have fought, and that's exactly what he wanted. Any reply, anger, sadness, hate, was a reply. It was engagement. It was proof that he still mattered, that he still had power, that I was still the fragile, obsessed girl from his story. Any response, even to fight, was letting him win. It was letting him set the terms. I looked at the glowing screen. Hey, you up? It wasn't a question. It was a reflex, a button he pressed to see if the machine still worked. I thought of Maya. His weakness is not your fault. I thought of my journal, my version. I thought of Sasha, her face sick with realization. He doesn't think any of this is real. I didn't block him. Blocking was a violent final slam of the door. It was an act of passion. It was for him. I didn't delete the text. Deleting was an act of fear. I pressed the button on the side of my phone. The screen went dark. I set the phone, screen down, on my nightstand. I picked up the bottle of water. I twisted the cap. The plastic cracked open. I took a long, deep drink. The water was cold. It was real. The silence was back. But this time it wasn't his. It wasn't a void. It was mine. Weeks passed. October's cold, damp air gave way to the knife-sharp chill of November. The leaves on the tree outside my window went from fire to skeletons. I finished my journal. I filled it with my version, and when I was done, I put it back in the desk drawer. I went to school. I sat in math class. I saw the girl from the corner store. She still wouldn't look at me, but this time I didn't feel the sting of humiliation. I just felt a distant, cold pity for her, for how awkward he'd made everything for everyone. I saw him too. In the hallway. From a distance, he was with his friends, Ben and Sam. He was laughing. He had a new haircut. He looked fine. He looked normal. He was the boy who had survived the suffocating girlfriend. His story had worked. He had won. And I watched him from across the crowded cafeteria, and I felt nothing. The poison was gone. The void was gone. All that was left was scar tissue. It was hard, and it was mine, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was just a part of me. That night, I sat on my bed, my laptop open. The old familiar login page glowed in the dark. My fingers, moving with a new, steady purpose, typed my password. The digital world came roaring back. A tidal wave of notifications, red dots, messages I'd missed, comments on the live photo I'd posted a lifetime ago. It was a cacophony of noise. I felt my chest tighten, the old instinct to run, to deactivate, to hide. I took a breath. I didn't hide. I went to my profile. The photo of me and Leo, the one captioned, "Working through it is worth it," was still there. It looked pathetic. It looked like a relic from an ancient, foolish civilization. My thumb hovered over it. I didn't delete it. I archived it. It was part of the story, my story. I didn't need to burn the evidence. I just needed to put it away. My profile was blank. An unwritten page. I went to my camera roll. I scrolled past the old photos of him, the ones that used to make my stomach ache. They looked flat now, like pictures of a stranger. I kept scrolling until I found one from last weekend. It was me and Maya. We were at the park, sitting on a bench, sharing a bag of fries. The sun had been bright, the air cold. We were both laughing so hard mid-sentence that our eyes were squeezed shut. Maya's head was thrown back, and my hand was on her arm, my face crumpled in a real, unpracticed, ugly, beautiful smile. It was the most honest picture of me that existed. I selected it. I hit next. The caption box blinked, waiting for my statement, waiting for my defense, my accusation, my comeback. Stronger than ever. Finally free. This is what loyalty looks like. I left it blank. There was nothing to explain. There was no one to convince. It wasn't a message to him or to Anna or to Sasha. It wasn't for public consumption. It was just a signal to myself. My story was no longer about him. I hit share. The next Saturday I was at a cafe, the kind with mismatched, sinking armchairs and bad acoustic music. The air was thick with the rich, bitter smell of burnt coffee beans and the sweet, milky scent of steamed milk. I was sitting across from Maya, our knees almost touching. My hands were wrapped around a thick ceramic mug, the heat seeping into my palms. It was the first time in months I'd just sat, in public, and not felt like I was on display. And so I told him, Maya was saying, gesticulating with her spoon, "If you think I'm writing that entire history paper for you, you're out of your mind." "What did he say?" I asked, taking a sip of my latte. It was too hot, and it burned my tongue, and it was perfect. He just did that stupid blinking thing. "Ah," she said, and she imitated him, her eyes wide and blank, making me spray a little bit of my drink. "Stop!" I laughed, a real full-bodied laugh. It felt good. It felt normal. In the middle of my laugh, my phone, which was sitting face up on the table, buzzed. I glanced down. The name on the screen hit me like a physical punch. Leo. The stupid, mocking heart was still there. I'd forgotten to change it. It wasn't a like. It was a new message. Maya saw my face change. Her smile vanished. "What? Who is it?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen. The notification preview was just one line. His new opening. His new reflex. "Hey, I miss your face." My breath caught. The flicker was there, just as I'd known it would be. A fast, cold jolt. I saw the group chat. I saw Sasha's phone. I saw his suffocating text. The scar ached. The old familiar acid rose in my throat, the taste of betrayal. He was tapping the glass. He had seen my post. He saw me laughing. He saw I was happy. And he couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand a narrative he didn't control. He had to see if the machine still worked. I looked at the text. "Hey, I miss your face." It was pathetic. It was a lure. It was a lie, and it had no power over me. The acid receded. The flicker of pain was gone, and in its place was a vast, quiet, unshakable peace. He was weak. His weakness was not my fault. "Chloe?" Maya asked, her voice soft, worried. "You okay?" I looked up from the glowing screen. I looked at my best friend. Her face was open, concerned, real. The air around us was warm and smelled like coffee. The bad music was playing. This was my life. The one I was living. He was just a ghost, stuck in a machine, sending the same message over and over, hoping someone would answer. I smiled. A real small, steady smile. "I'm great," I said. My hand reached out. But it didn't open the message. It didn't block him. It didn't even type a reply. I just pressed the button on the side, silencing the screen. Then I turned the phone over, placing it face down on the dark wood of the table. The black, blank rectangle just sat there. It was just a thing. "So what did you end up writing about for that paper?" I asked, picking up my mug. "Because I have zero ideas." Maya blinked, surprised by the change. Then she saw my smile, and her own returned, slow and bright. "Oh, it's so good," she said, leaning forward. "I'm doing the French Revolution." I leaned in, and I listened.